can follow along.
Okay.
Device is charging slowly.
Good evening.
Story of my,
Not too bad.
story of my life.
What's up?
My fingers are very dry, apparently.
Mine have been. I feel like a plastic spoon.
I'm very prone to paper. Sorry to hear that.
Well, you know, when you have dry skin, it's just really easy to slit your wrist with a piece of paper.
Are we,
No, that one, I think we eliminated that. I mean, you know, it comes down
Cuts
to
are-
intent.
Well, paper cuts are
In the
partly
end.
the risk for the job.
Yeah.
You get to go home if you bleed a lot.
No, you don't. She never let me go.
I'm not a big bleeder, but I've had some very deep, serious paper cuts.
What's bad is when you get it here with the file.
File folder.
File folder, oh my.
I did that one time, bled for
I
like
look
2
less than
days.
thrilled up there.
Yeah, but then, you know, you can go like this for a long time and it
Are we ready?
take your mind off of the pain.
Hurts when I
Life
do
is
that.
so tough.
Don't do
Isn't
that.
life tough?
So we have, this is being filmed, I imagine.
You got it. That food's for first class for us.
Did you get my message about the,
Which one?
well, where I told you to rip all this crap off?
Oh, I did see that, but I didn't know if you were being facetious or you actually meant it.
No, no, I meant it.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
How about today? Do you still mean it today?
I do.
We'll ask tomorrow then.
All right. Oh, we got 30 seconds. But by the time we get going, if I could have the camera, please. There we go. Good evening, everyone. We'll call this special meeting of the Lincoln Park Mayor and City Council, meeting of April 29th, to order. If I could, let's see, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would please rise for that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We could have roll call, please.
Councilpersons Breeding.
Present.
Higgins.
Here.
Kelsey.
Here.
Parkinson.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Salcido.
Here.
And Mayor Carnes.
Here. That means everyone is here. The special meeting is to discuss assessing services for the city of Lincoln Park. And I think that we will open up with Mr. Koppler. Mr. Koppler?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Let's kind of get caught up here. We finally did get all of the reference checks done. I do have copies of each one if you want to review them. I will say, and you can probably guess, that most of them were actually all of them were very favorable for each of the different companies. There wasn't anything that I saw that would indicate any concern in my mind to what they're being able to offer to us. There was one community on one of them that did give I wouldn't say a negative, but they questioned if going forward he would make sure that they had the ability to take on additional clients. So again, they're all favorable. That's why I didn't get them out to you sooner, because actually we just finished them about 3 o'clock today. So the first one I'm handing out is WCA. The next one you're getting is on Rizzo. And the last one is for Comer. And like I said, there wasn't anything that stuck out in my mind
Sorry about that.
that would indicate any concern
Yeah.
coming from any of
About
them
that.
related to their abilities
Should be all
in
set.
reference to their references.
All right.
The other thing I just want to talk about, a handout right before the meeting, is this little spreadsheet I did. It says assessing options, total cost of Lincoln Park. And what I did was I laid out what the costs for each of the 3 options that you're looking at. And we can also then refer to each one by either option A, WCA, option A, Comer, option A, Brazeau, option B, Comer, option B, WCA, or collaborative scenario 1 or scenario 2. So trying to give us at least a common thing to be talking to when someone asks a question or wants more information. She's laughing at me already, so I don't know what that means yet, but. So that's a common, so we all are talking off the same page. You will see that some of these numbers have been adjusted downward from the last time we met, and that's primarily because of the wages that we had in for the full-time person came down as well, because initially they were kind of a rounded number that I knew we were going to be under. Now it reflects what I believe that number to be accurately, so.
That's 47 before, and it's now what, 44.
Yeah, it's 43.6, I think, or 44.1. Today has been a bad day for numbers, and you'll find out in our next meeting about that.
Don't sound good.
It's
sound
not,
good
trust
at
me,
all.
it's not. So with that being everything I handed out tonight, I thought I'd go back to the reason why we postponed last week's meeting and talk about the memo that I circulated to mayor and council regarding working with the city of Melvindale. And this was something that Melvin, the administrator, the administrator from Melvindale and I had talked about a couple times, but we didn't know if it would be something that we could put together in a relatively quick manner. Working with Mr. Brazeau, we were able actually to get quite far. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it for last Monday, but over last week we were able to, I think, put it in a good framework to where I feel comfortable in what the numbers could be for the city of Lincoln Park and what the framework would be. I think there's still a few things we still need to work out with the city of Melvindale, but for the most part, I think all this is doable within the time frame I laid out. And so this is kind of a hybrid model of everything we've talked about, and I think it addresses a lot of the elements of what council was talking about at the last meeting. There was a desire to try to pull as much in-house as possible. So this allows us to actually employ not only the staff, at least one of the staff, if not 2 members of staff, but also the assessor as an employee of the city. But I want to, make sure you understand that that's still going to be a contractual relationship with that assessing employee. So, we do have contracts with employees. You have a contract with me. We have contracts with the fire chief and the police chief. So it's going to be somewhat similar to that. There'll be maybe a little bit more because it's going to be a 1099 relationship rather than a true employee relationship. So, the benefits that would come with a full-time employee wouldn't be here, and it was going to be a part-time employee anyways. So again, the tax responsibilities don't fall on our shoulders. It's all going to be with that individual. But I wanted to make sure that we understood that. And that individual, Mr. Brazeau, under option A, would have the same relationship, but the cost would be a lot more. So he would still be an employee of the city, but it would be a contractual relationship again with that, which is a little bit different than the other 2, which are strictly contracts for services. And they're not our employees. that clear? See, I told you it's going to get more complicated, so you shouldn't laugh at that point. But that's, yeah, go ahead. I mean, at any point, interrupt me.
I'm sorry, it's just that even with Melvindale, he would still be contracted with us.
Yeah,
Considered our employee.
He would be our employee.
Okay.
Right, and so the way that worked, and if you look at the budget I put together on the third page of the memo, under scenario 1 and scenario 2, you see that the total cost for Zoe, and it's listed right now under a contractual place. I didn't want to get it mingled up with some of the other things we're familiar with, so it was be hard to pick out what the cost would be for that. But that cost actually represents the cost to the city of Lincoln Park and the city of Melvindale. and as you go down to the next table, which below, or actually, let's see where it goes. I guess it doesn't break it out. I thought I broke it out. Maybe I'll find it here. Yeah, so it's actually on the second page under the staffing where I get into that whole cost of services. So under option A, his price just to the city is $135,000. But because of the relationship that we would have with the city of Melvindale, that price is actually reduced by 15%. So it goes down for our cost to $114,750. But we would be absorbing the whole cost, and then we'd be apportioning out the cost to the city of Melvindale. Does that make sense? You sure?
So he would be our employee, and we would be loaning him to Melvindale, in theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, however you want to look at that, yeah. But he would be our employee.
The only, excuse me, through the chair, the only question would be then is that instead of being on a contract like we do for contractors, it would be a 1099, you're actually getting a form, which is like a self-employed individual.
Yeah.
Am I understanding what you're saying
Yep.
is? Okay.
Good?
Continue. yeah.
Continue? She totally took me out of where I was going with all of this. Now I have to recalculate this. Okay. So the way that we envision this working, points against you. The way that this would work is, with a central focus here in our offices. So we would have the assessor here. We would have one main employee here. And one of the things that we're still working out is what is that requirement for staffing in the city of Melvindale. Right now, they have a part-time person that they have as their assessing clerk. That's someone that the city of Melvindale would like to see potentially become a full-time. And that's why this cost becomes a little bit difficult to guess at today because, is that person going to be full-time or isn't that person going to be full-time? But they have a luxury that we don't. They have not as much walk-in as what we have. Plus, they have other staff there that already is kind of filling in for that individual. And I think that individual is working about 29 hours a week right now for the city of Melvindale. So when that person's not there, they do have other staff that can accommodate some of the questions, for forms or take requests or whatever they need. And so that is still something that they have to work out. From my standpoint, I think, I would still be pushing towards a part-time person in that capacity. But I think, again, what their comfort level is going to be decided over the next few months as we go to work out the final details for July 1st for them in this joint project. But But from our perspective, and that's the problem we're going to have, is keeping what's our perspective and what's the collaborative's perspective. So from our perspective, though, we're going to have probably a better coverage. It's going to be open 8 to 4. The assessor is not going to be there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's probably going to be in that 20 to 30 hours, depending upon. And he also knows that at certain times he's going to be here a lot longer, just how it is. But we will have a similar type staffing with the ability to bring that second position over when we know that the full-time person is not going to be available. So again, that's still being worked out, whether it's going to be a part-time or full-time position. But at this point, I think it makes more sense being a part-time position for the collaborative.
Mr. Chair? What benefit would it be for us to make it a full-time position? I mean, if she's already covering in Melvindale, and in the event that our clerical isn't there, she would cover for that office. So why would we even encourage or go along with creating another full-time?
So I think, again, when you look at it from the collaborative standpoint, there's two things, I think, to answer that question from the collaborative. One is we want to build backup in case of someone leaves us or there's a long-term illness or whatever. Having that position full-time can plug in without any loss or any headache. I think from his standpoint, or again, City of Melvindale's standpoint, one, they want this individual to keep working for the collaborative for the City of Melvindale as well, and they feel that a full-time position would afford that person the ability to stay together with us. Because again, what we're trying to build is the reliability and under worst case scenarios, we want to make sure that we have people that we can count on for a foreseeable future. And again, we got into a lot of discussion about years down the road with this and how to build this to where we have the ability, so we're not necessarily going out and trying to find another assessor somewhere down the road, and how we could build this to do that. And again, it makes more sense having people on staff to do that. I think the third thing, again, is more of a benefit to Melvindale, which would be a benefit to the collaborative, is that would afford them more hours of time to have a person over there, and still allow them to work over in this office as well. Because I think that's the other part of all this, is there's a lot of work to be done to actually bring together two assessing offices. And again, the desire would be the actual merger of the operations into one office space. That means all the files, all the records, but make it available electronically over in Melvindale as well. So there's a lot of work that would have to be done to get that done. I mean, a lot of scanning, a lot of collaboration to get that done. So I think that's why he or they would like to see that be a full-time position.
Okay, and in your memo, your letter, the part-time that's in Melvindale, she has retiree health care? Did I?
No,
Okay.
but they do offer that, though.
Okay.
And so again, that's where, as we get into the thought of whether this position is a employee of the City of Lincoln Park, or if we split, our staff person's ours, their staff person's theirs. They pay that cost, we pay our cost. That could have an impact on how we actually break this out, because again, it may be that ultimately they want to keep that individual as their staff, that we can use at times for ours. So there's going to be a cost associated with that from us to use that person, and that cost goes up if it's their employee versus our employee. But we won't have the full cost, but what our cost would be higher than if it's a part-time position in the City of Lincoln Park.
Through the chair,
Yes, sir.
if Melvindale wants a full-time position, then why don't you just have Melvindale pay it? Because our full-time employee is going to cover costs for them also, So if they want a full-time, tell Melvin they have to make up the difference.
Yeah, no, and again, that's, how this all breaks down related to the, how the cost is ultimately passed out to the two communities will determine that. I mean, again, I don't want to get into a lot of that, but, there's a number of different ways that we could do the assessment of the cost between the two cities. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. And again, as I kind of played them out, they all kind of fit in the same range. I mean, it's not going to be a dramatic increase for Lincoln Park, but it's going to be an increase under some scenarios versus others, and that's one of them that would be about the same cost when all said and done. Because again, if it were us, and there's a possibility that could happen, but we wouldn't want it to happen, is if they needed staffing over in that office, we may have to do something with our employee here to allow for that as well. Because again, it's a collaborative and it's a two-way. But we don't think that that's going to be an issue, at least based upon when you look at the hours of, we're 5 days a week. They're 5 days a week, but fewer hours. Sometimes they're 4 days a week. So it kind of changes. And we think that in the end, it's probably going to be a set number of days, 3 days of staffing over there. And then, if they're full-time, the other 2 days will be spread out with us. And so there's still a lot, but the end dollar amounts really don't change when you start breaking down the different ways that this cost is going to be assessed. Because, for us, the way you need to look at it is kind of the way that I presented those three, option A, option B, and then the collaboration with Melvindale. Under most of the scenarios, probably 90% of the scenarios that I was doing in terms of costs and the way the budgets worked out, we fell in that between the scenario 1, scenario 2 costs, depending upon how you break it all out and whether it's full-time or part-time. And so when you see that, you see that, those numbers are pretty consistent with what you have in option A and option B.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of work to do because you have enough options here to look at.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important to understand that with the collaborative approach, Mr. Brazeau has agreed, even though we won't be at a collaborative position and probably until July 1st, because as I mentioned in my memo, we still have to do a shared service agreement with the City of Melvindale, which we think would be able to put together within about 1 or 2 months, which puts us at the July 1st time frame that we think we can do that. But Mr. Brazeau has agreed to hold the collaborative price of the 114 for us, and I can't remember what the cost for Melvindale was, but he's willing to hold that even though we're not going to be at the full collaborative situation until July 1st. So we get kind of a benefit for a few months here.
Now, these conversations have been taking place with representative of Melvindale being, is it their city manager or is
Your city administrator, yep.
city administrator? So he obviously had authority to do that and thinks that this is something that their council would agree to?
Yeah, they are meeting, they have a meeting this Wednesday to go over all this.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I
Did
got
you-
one more question.
Yes.
If I could. So, Tony is gone as of tomorrow.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, last day
So-
tomorrow.
So,
Maybe not forgotten, but gone.
in his absence before July 1st, where are we?
So under this, if, in any of these options, we are prepared to have staffing May 1st in the office, if you say go. And the assessor, we would, again, like to bring back a resolution on May 6th at that meeting to wrap that up.
To a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you need guidance to determine which of the options you think that we're thinking of going
Yep.
to,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Did you have more that you were presenting?
Well, I guess I want to wrap up in terms of what I think are the two most viable options, and they may seem a little bit contradictory, but I think I've stopped looking at option A as what is best for us. So it really comes down to two options, I think. One is the collaborative in Melvindale, which I think addresses all the concerns or all the questions, all the wants that council has. It provides a lot of control by the city of Lincoln Park. It helps control some of the costs because we're going to be sharing with the city of Melvindale. It moves us forward in terms of collaboration, and opens up the door for other cities actually to work with us on this. And I know there's a couple more that may be interested in doing something down the road, not in the near term, but maybe a year or 2 years down the road. So I think if we're looking from what council has said that they want, which is a lot more control, more customized service to the city of Lincoln Park, then the collaboration with Melvindale is the way to go. If that's not the way you want to go, the way that makes sense as well to me is that option B, which is we basically turn everything over just like we're doing right now with FUCO assessing to WCA. And again, I think that controls our costs. It allows us to ramp up fairly quickly. It gives us a lot of flexibility over the life of the contract. If an employee is not there, they're responsible to bring that employee in and figure that all out for us. So those are the two options I think we really should be talking about now. Option A, again, is kind of in between option B and the collaborative. I think the collaborative addresses all the issues that council has brought up. And option B, I think, is kind of the easy go-to to get a lot of the headaches off of our shoulders and put them onto the contractor to handle.
And so you're looking for guidance of which way to prepare the resolution, which we would act on for the May 6th meeting.
Yep.
All right.
Good, Chair.
Yes, sir.
I talked to the administrator for Melvindale this evening. They are very, very interested in trying to get this smoothed out. So I know that they'll be happy with it.
Yeah, this for them, the collaborative is their best cost scenario. Whatever ultimately that works out, that's their best cost scenario.
Okay. Anyone else has information how they think that we should go?
I just got a couple questions. What is our staffing for the assessor's office downstairs now? How many hours a week do we staff? 40 hours downstairs?
Well,
for the office to be open for somebody to come in, or what? As of currently, be not where we're going, but currently what we're doing.
Yeah, the contract doesn't call for 40 hours a week. I think we get that for most of the time.
Okay.
But the contract we have with FUCO doesn't require it to be 40 hours.
What is it?
I want to say we said between 9 and 4, so it works out to be 25, or should be 35 hours.
Okay, so we're gonna, if whatever scenario we're gonna go to, we're gonna bump that up to a 40-hour.
Yep,
basically is what we're
it'll
doing.
be 8 to 4.
So it'll be manned every day, 8 hours a day, regardless.
Yeah.
Am I correct? That's what we're talking about. Okay. Now, the collaborative with the issue of Melvindale, we haven't got the language yet, obviously, because we haven't worked it out, if we're going that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be interested in to see where the exclusions are, except, with one of the issues where if they decide in their wisdom to go a different way, is there a out clause or a clause they have to give us? Because obviously if we go that way, we're talking about sharing somebody who will become it. So we're predicating our cost and our procedure on that contract or that shared services agreement for a period of time, hopefully. Okay. Now, if not, we go to the other one where we contract the whole thing out, and that won't even bother us because we're not involved in Melvindale. Am I correct?
Correct. And I've given a lot of thought to what that shared service agreement is going to be looking like, and for it to make sense for both parties on the issue of being able to opt out, we're probably going to require a 6-month advance notice. I mean, it would take about that amount of time, I think, to be able to replace, or for them to be able to replace that, and for us to adjust budgets and all that. And so, they're on a calendar year budget where we're on a fiscal year budget. So there are some intricacies we have to figure out on what that timing looks like. Because 6 months to us would be better at December, where 6 months to them may be, in July. So I mean, there's certain things like that we have to figure out, but we'll give both parties, a sufficient amount of time to find someone. And again, from our perspective, the employee is going to be ours if you go that route. So really, what that period of time does is just gives us the ability to adjust our budget to reflect a change in the cost.
And then, through the chair, in your memo you sent to us, it says the annual wage of $44,053 would be comparable to the grade C wage in the GLC union contract. Is that going to be a union position? Is it in the position at Melvindale going to be a union position, even though it's part-time? Or is it contractual now at Melvindale, like it's contractual?
Yeah, in Melvindale, that's a good question. I didn't ask if that is in the union. I assume that it wasn't in the union there. But I'd have to check that. But it is, the responsibilities of this position are going to be such that it falls, in my mind, into the GLC contract, or into that category. Right now, it's not in that particular union. I'm sure, as we are now going to be beginning the negotiations for the successor agreement, that probably will be brought up once you make that decision. But it's comparable to that, yeah.
And then through the chair, we're only going to, if we go to the shared services, basically, we'll have 2 employees, or we'll have access to a full-time employee and a part-time in Melvindale, am I correct? Okay. Where if we go outside, we got access to unlimited amount of people because the contractor would no matter what happens, they'd have to supply a body or somebody in there to fulfill the job.
I have one more question.
I'm done.
My question is, if this is the salary that you've determined that's what should be paid, obviously she's been doing the job, this person's been doing the job, so there would not be any upgrade within a 6-month period or whatever, like currently is in the union contracts, or probation. There wouldn't be any probation.
Well, there would be a probation. I mean, it still would be the same amount of probation. It would be starting at a higher level within the Again, if it were in a contract, this one's not in a contract at the present time, there'd still be a probation period that would have to be served.
And then an upgrade after the probation? Paid
So, no, because, if we look at this as saying it was in the union, so what we've done in any of our bargaining units, whenever we appoint to a higher level than the probationary, is that they would not get the next bump until what the bump is. I'm trying to remember, I think this is like the 30-month, so I can't remember if it goes 42-month for the next one, but whatever that is. I mean, we've had it where, there's 6 months or 12 months, whatever that period is to the next adjustment, that's how long it would be. It wouldn't be at the end of, in some of our probations, 6 months. So there wouldn't be a starting rate in 6 months, it gets bumped up. It'd be whatever that period of time that they'd have to spend in that particular classification, or that particular step would be. So if it's 12 months, it's 12 months. If it's 18 months, it's 18 months.
But as long as it's not part of the GELC yet.
Right. Yeah,
Currently, the way it is here, it would not have any bump up in pay.
Correct. Because, non-union does not have that.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yes, ma'am.
if I could, please, how long is it going to take the assessor's office to get updated? You know, to go, I guess, you know, get the files digital and all of that we've fallen behind on.
So I'm always conservative when I say these things. I think it's to get it to where I think it should be. It's probably going to be about 24 months.
Is that under any of the scenarios that we go by?
Well, no. It's I want to make sure when we're talking. So, in terms of digitizing all of our records and getting that in, getting the GIS updated to where it needs to be, getting the plat book updated, all those things, I think is going to be about a 2-year process to do that, because part of it is going to cost us money to do some of those things. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, I'm being very conservative. We might be able to do a lot more. Again, with more staffing, gives you more ability to do those things, but I think it's...
Yeah, that was my concern. I'm thinking that WCA has the staffing to do that.
Well, I don't know necessarily what their commitment on their staffing is going to be with that. If because again, maybe you can address that in terms of what you were thinking, what the staffing would look like here in Lincoln Park. Yeah, please.
Thanks. Aaron Powers with WCA. You said the staffing here in Lincoln Park, and under what specific scenario? Because I know that we've shared so many with you. It's really kind of difficult for me to know exactly what I'm referring to.
No. I believe if we went all in with you at the 198,000, so it's the comprehensive that you're going to be providing not only the assessor but also the office staff.
Sure. So the staffing would obviously be that we have someone here continually during your hours of operation, as well as that we have the entirety of our organization behind that. As far as the digitization of your records, we have done that on numerous different occasions for jurisdictions that we have began working with, and we always look at it as a investment. Why do we look at it as an investment? It's simply because we've been servicing a lot of the same clients for over 30 years, and obviously by us having those records corrected and up to date certainly makes our job easier. We certainly, when we go with a client, we anticipate being a partner with a long-term relationship, and we've been able to essentially do those in certain circumstances. I'm trying to think, and Doug, help me if I can remember the last one, like Garden City or one of the other ones. Highland Park. Yeah, we did Highland Park in less than a year. And I'm not quite certain if you had an idea what their records were before, but everything is now photographed in Highland Park. Everything is digital sketched in Highland Park. Everything is available online in Highland Park. And we did that in less than a year. So GIS is a little bit different as far as mapping, because we're not specifically mapping experts, but we were able to digitize that. Community parcel count for Highland Park is... So that's about a third of the size as you here, but we accomplished that within just one season. So
You were with Northville Township, and I don't know if we haven't talked about Northville Township, so there would be no reason for you to go look. But I know that is kind of the model we're looking at in terms of some of the GIS and the plat books and all that. You've been there a while, I think. So
actually, we are the longest, to be honest, and this is a proven fact, our employee in Northville Township is the longest serving employee currently working in Northville Township. We've been there 24 years. 26 years?
32 years.
Yeah.
My apologies. I was
if
a little
you
incorrect.
Go to Northville Township's website and look at what they have to offer in terms of assessing, you guys, or WCA, has been there as part of that and bringing it up into to where it's at right now.
Our employee's been there 24 years, but yes, that is correct.
Okay, a kind of a follow-up question to hers. If we went the other route and with the shared with Melvindale, we talked about how we would have to have communications, of course, with their. How long would that take to set up? And do we have the tech to do that ourselves, or are we bringing in other people to do that?
Well, the two components to that, one, they already use BSNA, so we already share a common tool to begin with. So I think communication is going to be easier. Maybe a little bit ahead right now of some of the things we're looking at to do with GIS, but there would be some desire from our standpoint to get them actually intertwined into our GIS, so their residents would have the same access as what our residents have, at least to the assessing side. Again, I think that's in that 24-month time frame if we do a collaborative to look at to sync everything together and get everything to be the same.
And do we know if their records are in the same shape as ours? I'll put it that way.
Have you had a chance to look at their records?
Some of them are the same, some of them are better, some of them are worse. I haven't gone piece by piece.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that they're probably similar to the shape that ours are in.
I didn't think you'd have a clear answer, but that's clear as mud.
Yeah. Well, I think knowing certain facts, I think that they have a lot of similarities in terms of their information that's available, and how they've managed that is very similar to ours. Without even looking at it, I can tell you that.
Could I ask one more?
Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair.
We're running into our budget meeting, but go ahead.
Yeah, as far as like the office equipment, under either group, we would be responsible for making sure that they have scanners and that.
Yeah.
It would be our equipment that we would be purchasing to bring the
Yeah.
office up.
So again, that's a cost that we're going to be confronting either way, because we need to do some things with ours. But it would be under a collaborative. It would be a shared cost at either a per parcel or, based upon. I mean, there's a number of different ways that we can come up with to share the cost, but it would be shared amongst the two communities.
I got a question through the chair. Out of the two scenarios, whichever way we go, how do we leverage the fact that we have authority over the people? In other words, any scenario that you give, we're still going to be with, whether it's somebody's going to be doing the work, basically. And us as being the purchaser of the services, whether the majority is with the collaborative with Melvindale or the issue with the vendor being the service for us, how do we assure we don't have any, or I shouldn't say assure, but how do we leverage in the language that we have more authority and more responsibility to us? In other words, if the Melvindale decides that their clerk can't come over here for whatever reason, we get into a little bit of a turf war between them and us. Maybe they got a problem with their person's got to be there, our person's sick, we got to have somebody come over. They say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. Now it's who has the, obviously we're paying the majority of the share, and I know we can't be the big bully, but in the same token, how do we ensure that we don't get into some scenarios that we have experienced in the past where we have not shared services, we have contracts and we are the majority payer for it, yet we have very little say-so, is what I'm asking for. What kind of language we can put in there, not to disenfranchise them, but still at the point that we are paying the lion's share, and make sure that we, for legitimate reasons, we have somebody come over here because obviously we have a larger public to service than them. Yeah. I mean,
so I think,
how would we do that?
So when you look kind of at what the current levels of services are, I think that's a key to how the services going forward will be. So, sort of. So right now they have other staff that is able to provide a level of service if their assessing clerk isn't available. Right? So that is going to be indicative of what it'll be like if we go with the collaborative. If the person is not there, then they have other people that can at least provide a level of service. I think that, again, looking at the collaborative approach, and if it's Mr. Brazeau that does that, when you look at some of his, and I spoke to at least one of his references, and I think that's the thing that you need to keep in mind is, there's two types of service here. There's the walk up, and that's 99% of the person you're going to have, manning the front desk for you. And that's a lot of the work that goes into our offices. Same thing for Melvindale, but there's a certain, it only goes so far in terms of what the questions that are going to be answered. If you don't have the assessor there, if it's a technical question that can't be answered. So then you start looking at, well, how does it work today? Well, today, if we don't have an assessor there, certified assessor, numbers taken, return phone call, find out the answer, get back, like that, which again can be done at both office spaces by an employee of the collaborative, or in Melvindale with one of their other employees that could do that. Then it goes to the return of the phone call by the assessor, and I think that's again in at least the one that I spoke to, and it kind of I think follows through with the other. For that individual is that they've all said that he's very responsive to both the request of their staff as well as the of the residents of those communities where he's at as well. So I think as long as that keeps up, it's not going to be that big of an issue. But again, I think we address a lot of these things through the service agreement that we're going to have. I believe the representative of Melvindale understood our need, that we do have a lot of walk-in, that coverage is a big issue for us, and we're prepared to on our own make sure that we have that coverage that we desire. So I think it's very clear they understand that.
Okay. Through the chair, I just want to make sure, because, there has been some agreements we've had that have come up short sometimes, and I remember being told, well, you guys have an agreement and that's the way it goes, and you pay your share, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, I'm paying the lion's share. Shouldn't I have more of a say-so? That was my question, because I feel if, without disrespecting anybody, if we're paying the lion's share, then there should be the service for our people to make sure, because we have the lion's share, like you say, of the walk-ins and so on and so forth, and to make sure that we don't have a disagreement over somebody coming over, irregardless of how they decide to do it.
And I think we're going to put this together in a way that that is not that big of an issue.
Okay, all right, just asking.
Just for clarification,
We're
let me ask
jumping
one-
in. We're jumping into the
I just want to
budget.
ask one quickie. One quickie.
Question may be quick,
In
but the answer may not
In
be.
the event, okay, the staff member is, whatever, not there that day,
Mm-hmm.
and Melvindale for some reason couldn't send someone over. We have an assessor that we're hiring. They can walk to the counter and wait on the walk-in customers or whatever, answer phones.
So I mean, again, thinking about the depth here, so there will be the ability, and we'll have an idea of the schedule of the assessor, and so plan things are easy. We can move between the two cities, people around, to address planned ones. So I'm not worried. It's a scenario where it's unplanned that morning that something like that could happen.
But in this, if the assessor wasn't there, and we didn't have a clerk, is there anything really life and death that if somebody comes in with a question that could not be handled the next morning is just almost as efficiently?
Right.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, as long as we do our best to
Yeah.
provide a service. But we're getting into our budget territory here. I know that we've had conversations that go. What we need is to be able to give the city manager direction of which of the options, or if the scenario that we would like to go with. So, okay. So does anybody have feelings? We'll go around the table with Councilman Higgins.
I like the collaborative with Melvindale.
All right, Councilwoman.
I like option B with WCA. I think the shape that our assessor's office is in, the whole, having to get updated.
Okay.
That's-
Understand. Councilman Kelsey.
I'm still on the fence either way, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought about it. That's why I had some questions and looking at. I'm still thinking about either option.
Okay, Councilman Parkinson?
I believe a shared program will work. It might be a little bit to roll out and get straightened out, but I think it'd be the best for both of us.
Okay, Councilman
I like
Salcedo?
the calibration of Melvindale myself.
Okay, and
I'll go along with that also.
yeah, and that's how I'm leaning towards too. So you prepare the resolution for that, and at which point we will be voting, or it would be an open resolution, so there'll be discussions on that, and that doesn't mean that that is a complete decision at this point. It's just that that's the way that we're heading, and we will be discussing this again on our May 6th meeting. Okay, then we will adjourn the special meeting at, looks like, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, clerk call the roll.
Councilperson Salcedo?
Yes.
Breeding?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
Kelsey?
Yes.
Parkinson?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
And Mayor Carnes.
Yes. We're 6 to 7.
All right.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Yep.
You got it.
No, I do not. That's why.
You're on a.
refrigerator, but I know we have water over.
That's why I ended up with the Pepsi bottle.
I'll talk to her tomorrow.